Hello. I see people are coming in. Welcome to Sitting with Uncertainty, Using Mindfulness to Live in the Present, presented by Carolina Behavioral Health Alliance and the Mood Treatment Center. I am Mark Chrisinger, and I'm your presenter today. I'm a counseling intern at the Mood Treatment Center, or soon to not be a counseling intern because I finished my work there. But I ran the mindfulness group at Mood Treatment Center, and so this is how I came to do this presentation about mindfulness. So let me bring up our ground rules for today. So I'm going to answer questions somewhere towards the middle of the presentation, and then I'm going to answer questions at the end. So you'll have two opportunities. If you think of a question when other people are asking, you'll have another opportunity at the end to ask. So to submit a question on your desktop, if you're on a computer, click Questions in the bottom right of the menu box. That's where you can submit it. So to submit a question on your phone, click the question mark at the bottom of the app. Also in the app, you can swipe back and forth to toggle between the video and the slides. So I guess that's been an issue with people. They go just to the video and they can't see the slides, or they're stuck on the slides and they can't see the videos. But if you're on your phone, you can toggle back and forth. So, and we'll probably do 20-25 minutes in when we'll have questions. So anything that's coming up in between, go ahead, write it down, put it aside, and hopefully I'll be able to answer it. So here we are. This is I'm here alone in a room, but at the same time speaking to 30 people. It's an interesting circumstance. So sitting with uncertainty. That's our theme today. And we have here an image from a depiction of Huck Finn and Jim on the river from Huckleberry Finn. And so they're sitting on a raft on a very uncertain river. And that is our metaphor today. That is what I'm going to return to. If I had to rename it, I would call it Raft on a River. But that's my goal, is to connect uncertainty with mindfulness, because that's what mindfulness was designed to address. Okay, so the subject is mindfulness and uncertainty, and I kind of have these learning goals for you all. So I want you to know what mindfulness is, understand what it is. It means paying attention on purpose without judgment, and we'll go over that again. I want you to understand the relationship between mindfulness and uncertainty is about control and love. So by being in the present, we can let go of what we don't control. For instance, the laws of nature, that's the river in our metaphor, the uncertainty, and take hold of what we do control, our own actions. That's the raft. That's how we navigate the river. We can't control the river, but we can navigate it with the raft in our little metaphor. So that's what I mean about the relationship between mindfulness and uncertainty. It's about control. And I say it's about love, and we'll get back to that later, because everything that is meaningful to us is on our raft in our metaphor. It's there in the present moment. And we'll come to this all later and clarify. So know how to practice mindful breathing, another objective. So let's start right now with this objective. Go ahead and take 3 breaths. Just notice your breathing at your nostrils. Just go ahead and take 3 breaths. I'm going to do it too. And there we go. You're already learning. I notice in myself, I feel a little calmer. I feel a little more real right now. And it just took a moment. And so we're already learning mindful breathing. We're going to do a little more in the next slide. So another objective, know how to practice mindfulness at any time by paying attention to what it feels like to be doing whatever you are doing. So paying attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. So for instance, for me right now, being mindful means paying attention to talking to you all, to how I'm sitting in this chair, to how I'm moving, to how I'm feeling, paying attention on this particular action. That's mindfulness in the moment. So another objective, know how to take a mindful pause. So guess what? You know how to do it. You're already excellent students. 1 to 3 breaths took only a moment, and it's a lot of bang for your buck. Brings you back to the present, helps you calm down a little bit. Okay, and finally, final learning objective, know that practicing mindfulness can help you let go of worry and stress, accept life, enjoy life, and strengthen your core values. So just about everything that mindfulness can do for you. Okay, so those are kind of the learning objectives, and these are reasons why mindfulness might be useful to you. So to reduce worry about the future and rumination about the past. So rumination and worry are a type of thinking called repetitive negative thinking. And so that's a type of thinking that it's repetitive, it's negative, it's difficult to control, and it's often about something that we can't control. It's trying to solve a problem that is not solvable. And so we all struggle with this type of thinking to a certain extent. People with mental disorders, sometimes it becomes debilitating. And that's the mental disorder, is being stuck on this rumination. And so mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is one form of therapy that uses mindfulness to reduce rumination by being able to recognize those thoughts and then focus in on the present to let go of them. So if rumination, worry is something that you struggle with, mindfulness may be of use in that regard. So to enhance the present by noticing what is good. So I was reading about Gestalt psychology recently, and it's about how we perceive things as patterns. Like if you see me doing this, you know that I'm making some indication of a circle, like I'm talking about something circular, but there's no circle there, you just fill in that pattern. And we look at things as wholes. And so I was reading this, and then I was thinking about my cat, and I was petting my cat, who is here on the side. By the way, the guy on the top he's the ruminator, the Rodin, the thinker. He's a ruminator. But in the middle, there's a picture of my cat. And I realized, after I was reading about Gestalt psychology, that I see my cat as a gray cat. Like it's this one concept I kind of put on her. She's a gray cat. And I knew that she was a dilute tortoiseshell with a little bit of brown, but I always thought of her as gray. And then I noticed the little brown spots. And when I was mindful in that way and noticed that distinction, instead of just looking at her as like, she's pretty much a gray cat, I was able to appreciate the beauty of her coat. And really, like that was like a few weeks ago, and I still am seeing her. I'm like, oh, she's so pretty. I love the contrast there, which I wasn't really processing before. So by being mindful, I was able to appreciate that. And this is really, really important because, so for instance, in depression, people who have depression, often their mood is low. It's not the same thing as depression. They have a low mood, and then maybe they don't experience as much pleasure from the things they normally do, like socializing. Then they withdraw. And then when they withdraw, they experience less reward from life. They experience less reward, their mood goes down even lower, and it's this downward spiral. Now, what can happen is the opposite, an upward spiral. So Barbara Fredrickson talks about the upward spiral theory of wellness, or the broaden and build theory of positive emotions, where we when we have little positive emotions, like me noticing how pretty my cat is, then that broadens our awareness. And when we broaden our awareness, we broaden our activity, and she says, we build our resources. So maybe I have a good meal, and then I go and I see my neighbor, and I'm more likely to talk to my neighbor. And because I talk to my neighbor the next day helps me build my shed, or, I end up getting a job offer or something. I build these resources through expanding my awareness, which is based in some type of positive emotion that we build our resources from a base of positive emotions, according to Fredrickson. And these positive emotions can be little things. And so how mindfulness is related to this is that we can't really be rewarded by something we don't see. Like if you're with somebody, you're with a friend, and you're not really paying attention to them, then you're probably not being very rewarded by their company. Like you say, oh, I really enjoy being around you, but I don't even look at the person and acknowledge them and show that I understand what they're saying. It's all about how my attention is being related to that person. That's how I'm rewarded by that interaction. And it's the same thing with anything, just noticing that it's a beautiful day out, or noticing that I feel good right now. Like I don't feel tired. I feel energetic. Just noticing these little things is a way that mindfulness can enhance our lives and help us build that upward spiral of wellness. So number 3, to increase acceptance of the present. So this is something that if you find that you're often arguing with what's going on, with that you feel like things should be different, and that you're always fighting the way things are, this is where mindfulness might help you. It might help you accept more. And so acceptance is, in our metaphor about the raft on the river, acceptance is about accepting the river for how it is. In our metaphor, we can't change the river. There's no dams. There's no ice flows. It's just the river. It's always there in summertime, and there's no messing with it. It is reality as it is. So acceptance is about accepting what we can't change and focusing our energy on what we can change, because that's where we have the most effective action. Even if we are driven towards outcomes, we're not going to get outcomes by denying the way things are. We're going to get outcomes by accepting things how they are. So number 4, to reduce stress and self-soothe. I think this is often advertised as the number 1 thing you might get from mindfulness is to reduce your stress. And that's true, but it's often cannot be the outcome, because you go down, you sit, you're mindful, you're aware of your body, and it's like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Mindfulness makes me even more nervous because you notice it, right? And so for some people that happens, and so that doesn't work. But in my experience with the mindfulness group I've run at MTC, most people find it to be self-soothing, to be stress relieving. So if you focus in on your breath for 1 minute, 5 minutes, it tends to calm you down. And then if you do that every day, say 10 minutes a day in the morning, over time you tend to be a little bit calmer. Though there's no guarantee that every time you do it, you're going to feel calmer. It's just if you're feeling anxious and you pay attention to how you feel, you're probably going to feel anxious. But as you pay attention to it, it will kind of go away. It's a wave going up, and as you pay attention, the wave goes down. Okay, and so the 5th reason to practice mindfulness is to return to core values. So we all have values, and we all want to live by values that we have, whatever those may be. No judgment on what they are, but how do we live by them? We live by them through action in the present moment, and mindfulness can help us return to those, because often where we're feel most stuck is where we act and we forget our values. And mindfulness can help us bring our values into the present moment. And that allows us to act from those values instead of from a place of habit or automatic behaviors. So those are some reasons why you might want to think about practicing mindfulness. Okay, so let's go over what is mindfulness. We mentioned this earlier. Jon Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So it's a way of paying attention. When we say so-and-so is practicing mindfulness, we mean they are paying attention on purpose, essentially. And then we have the spirit of mindfulness, and this is where the sitting with uncertainty comes in. So the spirit of it is it's an ancient practice for dealing with impermanence. So Jon Kabat-Zinn, he brought mindfulness to the Western empirical tradition, and he did so through, he wanted to work with people with chronic pain to help them. And so he was a practitioner of Zen Buddhism. And in Zen Buddhism, they do a lot of mindful breathing. And he thought this would be very useful. And why did he think that? Is because that's what it was designed to do. That mindful breathing was a response to the problem of impermanence in the context of Buddhism, and we'll talk about that later. But that's the spirit of mindfulness, and it's about acknowledging impermanence, the so-called river, and then also acknowledging the raft where we control. So the raft is where we navigate the river. That's where we have our power, through our attention, through our thinking, through our actions. So that's the spirit of mindfulness, and we'll explore that through Buddhism, through Stoicism, and through Ecclesiastes, the Judeo-Christian book of Ecclesiastes. I wanted to get a kind of a good cultural balance of traditions talking about this problem of impermanence, because the mindfulness side, the paying attention on purpose, that's very much taken from the Buddhist tradition. And so that the flavor of it is very Buddhist, but the spirit of it is really, it's there in a lot of ancient philosophy. And I want to emphasize that because probably you're in touch with these traditions to a certain extent. And if I can help you connect with your own cultural traditions and how they address impermanence, I think that's very useful. Okay, so we know the definition of mindfulness. We know the spirit of mindfulness. And we've practiced a little bit, but I want to practice more because this is, I think, for me, I learned about mindfulness. You know, I didn't learn the definition of mindfulness before I learned mindful breathing. But once I learned mindful breathing, I knew what mindfulness was. Is that experiential knowing. So I want to take the time now to sit for about 3 minutes. We're going to practice mindful breathing, and please participate as you are comfortable. If during the exercise you find that you want to disengage, there's no pressure to engage in the exercise. It's just to help you have a better experiential understanding of mindfulness and what it's like to practice mindful breathing, which might be something that you would want to practice on a daily basis. So I'm going to practice with you all, and I will guide you throughout. We'll do about 3 minutes. So you can either get in a comfortable position. You can sit back in your seat. You can sit up like I am. And if you're sitting up, just go ahead and make your knees lower than your pelvis so you achieve the natural curvature of your spine. You can keep your eyes open or closed. And if they're open, just go ahead and look down in front of you, maybe 1 foot in front of you, and keep your gaze resting in one spot. And go ahead and notice any thoughts going to the past, any thoughts going to the future, thoughts of the present. And give yourself permission to let go of those. for now. They can come up, they can go. These are problems you don't need to solve right now. And the way that you can let go is by focusing your mind on your breathing. So go ahead and focus on your breath at your nostrils or your abdomen. Just notice very closely what it's like to breathe. It doesn't have to be deep. Just have to notice it, whatever it is. And as any thoughts come up, you notice them. You return your attention to your breathing. And you'll just keep doing that throughout. And if it's helpful to you, you can count your breaths. 1 on the in-breath, 1 on the out-breath, 2 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, and so on up to 5. And then you can repeat. So let's go ahead and do this for about a minute, and then we'll return to the presentation. And noticing any thoughts, returning to the breath. Noticing any thoughts, returning to the breath. Okay, can go ahead and take 1 or 2 more breaths, and we'll return to the presentation. So yeah, that's mindful breathing. I think, just reflecting on my experience right now, sitting here and focusing in on the breath with you all, obviously doing the instructions, but trying to focus in on the breathing too. It's definitely, I feel calmer. And my mind feels clearer too. It's just all the stuff that I was talking about before, that just fell off. And I was just here with you all, focusing on the breath, giving the instructions. And that's very powerful. It's very powerful if what was happening before was something that was ruminative, something that is a problem we can't solve, is something that is negative and hurts us. To be able to disengage from that in a way that's effective, that allows us to go and commit effective actions instead of rumination, that's very powerful. So next we're going to go on to, and I like to say that if you all have any questions about how to focus on the breath, that may be some of the richest questions you could have. Any struggles you had during the mindful breathing exercise, those may be some rich questions. And do not feel, if you struggled, do not feel alone. This is difficult for people. So let's go on. We're going to talk about the spirit of mindfulness in Buddhism, Stoicism, and the Judeo-Christian book of Ecclesiastes. So Jon Kabat-Zinn took all of his, pretty much except for a few, his exercises from Buddhism. And so it's helpful to know, what is Buddhism about? So we have this image here, and it's a very stark image. There's an image of the Buddha, and there's historical reasons why he looks like that, but they don't matter. It's a symbol. And the symbol is having an impermanent body. His body is so emaciated. He's very obvious that he's mortal. It's that impermanence with living deeply at the same time. So in this symbol, his body is the river that he can't control, right? Maybe he should have something to eat, and I'm not going to comment on that, but the body is what he can't control, right? He can't control that his body gets sick and dies. But what he can control is how he focuses his mind, how he lives in the present moment, his actions. So that's kind of, that symbol really exemplifies what Buddhism was about and what mindfulness is about, as it is a product of Buddhism. So basic idea in Buddhism is that craving is the cause of suffering. Craving for what? Craving for permanence in an impermanent world. So we want that river to be something, we want to be able to walk on the water. We want it to be concrete. We want it to be frozen. But life isn't like that. It's not frozen. It flows, right? It's so unpredictable, and that's the power of life, right? And we become our most powerful when we stop fighting against the stream and we start learning on how to navigate our raft. And so in Buddhism, the raft is our attention, our thoughts, our speech, and our action. These are the things that we have the power to control. So let's look at this relationship between mindfulness and uncertainty. So there's kind of two steps in Buddhism about how do we address this problem of uncertainty. Well, you got to recognize it. So there's a contemplation of death and the body dying, and knowing that the body is of that nature. So it's recognizing it, and then it's learning to take effective action in the present, to be present so that we can do so, and to detach from those things that we don't control. And we'll get more into that when we get to Epictetus, because I think Epictetus puts it better in the next slide. Oh, and I want to say here in the bottom one, there's a story about kind of a definition of mindfulness in early Buddhism. And it's about this guy. I don't even know why this story is the way it is, but it's about this guy who has to carry a bowl of oil through a city, and there's a guy behind him with a sword, and he's going to chop his head off if he spills a drop of oil. And that's the story. I don't know why, but it shows the intensity with which they looked at mindfulness. Like that type of intense focus that someone would have is how they looked at mindfulness. And this reminds me of when I worked with kids in mental health, and I would take them out. We would go hiking, and I also tried to get them to meditate at times when we were doing other activities, and they would, but only for like a minute. Though it was pretty cute that they would. So anyways, I would take them out to the woods, and we would see like a bird or like a squirrel, and be like, stop. And they would, we would stop. And then we would tiptoe. These are like little kids, like 8, tiptoe towards the animal, and this is mindfulness. That's the type of mindfulness that human beings were designed to practice. That's it's just our nature. We want to be here, and we want to be relating to our environment in a very real and effective way. So I think that's a good image of mindfulness, those kids trying to stalk a bird. They didn't catch any, by the way. Though there was one kid who was very good at catching frogs, so I was impressed with that. He couldn't pay attention any other time, but when he was on those frogs, he had a lot of mindfulness. Okay, yeah. So this would be a time to go to questions. And I have my questions here on my phone. Let's see. Okay, so some good questions. How does mindfulness help you increase acceptance? Okay, let's talk about that. So, as I was saying earlier, in the metaphor of the raft and the river is the things that we don't control, and the raft are the things we do control. And so the first way that mindfulness helps with acceptance is we're often worked up trying to control those things that we don't control, like traffic. You know, who doesn't try to control traffic? Or I was reading something about people, how they talk to ATM machines. You know, we all know we don't control an ATM machine by talking to it. People do it. And we invest emotional energy into talking to an ATM machine. And that could really sour your mood. It could be part of that downward spiral, right? That damn ATM machine, you know, if it weren't for what the ATM machine did, I'd had a good day. But so the first step is seeing what is there. So stopping and looking and noticing, okay, what do I control and what do I not control? So distinguishing. So you can think about it like if you're on this raft in the river and you're looking ahead to those rapids and you're just focused on the rapids, right? They're terrible. Like rapids aren't going to be good. But always in your mind, it's like you're tunnel vision on the rapids. The mindfulness, we stop and we take in the whole. So we take in the whole river, the banks. We see the calm rivers ahead of the rapids. We see calm river behind. We see the raft. And that's really the important thing is we see, okay, wait a minute, I'm heading towards the rapids, but I have this oar and I can steer my raft in the best way possible to get through this. And so that's how mindfulness can relate to acceptance, is seeing, you know, what is the whole situation here and where do I have power? I think it's in some ways some people might think it's negative, but I think it's empowering to recognize how little power we have in that, you know, I can't change that there are rapids, but I can change how I pay attention to the river. What am I noticing? I can change how I think about the rapids. Like, okay, I can do this. I see that I've done it before. I can do this. I can change what I say, you know, so how I communicate with other people on the raft, and I can change what I do, how I steer the raft, right? So that's how mindfulness can help with acceptance. Another way that it can help is real basic. If you sit there, you're having a hard time accepting something, and you sit down for 15, 30 minutes, and you focus your attention on your breath, and that thing comes up, right? Because it's always essentially a concept, a thought that we can't accept. The fact that so-and-so did this thing, the fact that I have to do something in the future, whatever it is that we can't accept, is going to come up as you're sitting. And as you sit, you just return your attention to your breathing. And the thought comes up and it falls down. And it comes up and it falls down. And guess what? That thought is fine without you paying attention to it. It's going to be just fine. It doesn't need your problem solving skills. It's just there. And so it's kind of like the mind, this is how the mind is. It's designed to accept. And I give this example, dreams. Every night we dream, right? And we have all this crazy stuff come up, really, really wild, wacky stuff. And the mind just is like, okay, yeah, this is real. This is this is just what's happening. The mind's not being all too judgmental. It's going to take a lot of weird stuff. It can tolerate a lot more than we tend to think it can. Like, and that's the power of sitting meditation, is that we sit there and whatever comes up, whatever is coming up, we're strong enough for that. We can just sit there and we're good. Like, if you just sit there, even if you don't pay attention to your breath, you just sit there and you do not move and you do not respond to what is arising in your mind, to what is arising in your body, to what's arising in the environment. Maybe people are talking, distracting you. You just sit there. You are practicing acceptance. So that is my answer for that excellent question. I hope that's a good answer. We have another question. I'm dealing with a very difficult situation. The negative self-talk is terrible. How can I better accept the present and be kind to myself? Yeah, the negative self-talk. It's a type of repetitive negative thinking, right? It keeps going, it's negative, and it's hard to control, right? It's like whoever asked this question, it's not like, well, do you ever think about not doing that? No, it's hard to control. The way that some of this type of thinking works is, and this can be seen like in obsessive compulsive disorder, it's not the same type of thinking, but it's similar, that the more we try to control our thoughts, the more they're going to come back against us. It's because we have what's called referential thinking. And so if I think, well, I don't want to think about what happened at work. Well, guess what? I've already thought about what happened at work. And so then I'm reminded of what happened at work. And then I say, oh, I'm thinking about what happened at work again. I don't want to think about that. And then I try to push it away, where we have all these frames of references that just keep going in this chain. So the more we try to push it away, the more it comes back. In mindfulness, we let it come up and we return our attention to the body. We ground in the body, because the body doesn't think. Our perceptions don't think. They're not inherently positive or negative. That's always added on later. But so one way that mindfulness can deal with negative thinking like that is, one is you recognize it, right? Okay, this is a river problem. This negative thinking, let's just, I don't know if it is, and this person could have really very valid reasons for thinking negatively. But for them, it's not helpful. So that's important to distinguish. But let's say it's a problem they can't solve. And so it's a river problem. So being able to recognize that that's the case, and then to return attention to the present moment, and especially to the sensations in the body, because there's no references there, right? It's not like, okay, I'm going from negative thinking to positive thinking. Because whenever you have a positive, you have the dialectic of the negative. And so you're reminded, oh, I'm being very positive. Good thing I'm not being negative. And then all of a sudden you're into that negative spiral. But if you focus in on the body, there isn't that same reference. You're just taking in your senses, which is just, it's just this good information. Like, it's a really good information. There's nothing about it it's not twisted at all. And so I would say to the person struggling with a negative thinking that being present in the body, that can be your safe spot. Just focusing on your breath. Your breath's not going to be negative about yourself, right? It's all good. And there's a lot of freedom there. That's why I smile about that, you know, I've used that in the past where I got stuck in some negative thinking, and just like, you know, I'm going to take 5 minutes and focus on the breath. You do that for 5 minutes and you really do that, your mind resets and you're in a different place, and it's really very beautiful. So, and then the other part was, how can I accept present and be kind to myself? How can I be kind to myself? And I think with mindfulness, we'll maybe get into this a little more, and I want to get going, but I think mindfulness can help you be kind to yourself by noticing what's good about yourself. Not thinking positive, like grandiose, or like, yeah, I'm the king of the world, you know, but just noticing what is good. Not making anything up, but seeing for real what is good. Okay, let's go on. So we're talking about Epictetus. Wow, I really got all over the place with this presentation, and but we're touching some really good stuff that I enjoy talking about. So Epictetus, so we're talking about raft and river. So Epictetus was a Stoic philosopher in ancient Rome. Of all existing things, some are in our power and others are not in our power. So he's talking about recognizing the river and the raft, distinguishing the two. It's kind of like, yeah, of course, Epictetus, we know this. Everybody knows this. Yeah, it's like the ATM machines. Yet we argue with the ATM machine. It's not in our power. Why do we do that? We invest emotional energy in it. So Epictetus is all about, so we have freedom through investing our mental and emotional energy in what we can control. And he was real like hardcore about this. By the way, Epictetus was basically the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy. If you've heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, Epictetus is known for the famous saying, it is not things that disturb us, but our mind that disturbs us, our thoughts about things. And that was kind of the foundation that Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck took to establish the cognitive therapy tradition of psychotherapy. Anyway, that's an aside. Just giving some credit to Epictetus. So he was all about investing your energy in what you do control. We control how we think, how we pay attention, what we do. And he's like, if you're trying to control like how other people see you, right, or whether or not you get a certain position, you get elected to a certain office, you're going to be unhappy. As long as you're investing all your energy in that, you're going to be unhappy. You invest energy in what you can control, you can be happy. And that's kind of the same thing as in Buddhism, the idea that if we don't want things that we can't have, which is permanence in an impermanent world. And I think this slide reminds me of that, again, that we really want to be present. We want to be here doing things effectively. Like, I don't want to be ruminating about whether or not there's rapids on the river. I really like, that feels like yucky to me. Like, I don't want to be sitting at home anxious about what's happening tomorrow. There's something about that feels twisted. And I hope you all know what I mean, that it feels like this unsettling, something's not right about it. Whereas when I'm here and I'm dealing with an actual problem, maybe it's unpleasant, but that's where I want to be. Henry David Thoreau says, what people want more than anything is to feel. And he says, even if a person is dying and all they have to do is rattle out their last breath in their throat, what they want, let them rattle out that breath and really feel it, to feel it very deeply. Okay, so going on, Ecclesiastes. And this is one of my favorite slides because we get to talk about mindfulness and love too. So this idea of impermanence helping us to love more deeply. So in this book of Ecclesiastes, whoever wrote it was a ruminator. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind, right? It's impermanent. And therefore he says, everyone, a wise man and a fool, they all get the same treatment. They all die in the end. It's meaningless. And he really went on and on about this. But then he came to a conclusion. And the conclusion was, I can't control the river and I can't really understand it. I can't really understand the laws of the universe and why things happen. But what I do understand is that I can be here and I can love and I can work and I can do my best. And that is what is meaningful. And I think that's so important to understand that when we see impermanence, that makes us love more deeply. So it's like this image of the flower here, a flower next to a skull. Great image. So the flower is cut, right? The flower is going to die right now. It's not dead yet. It's very much living. And because it's going to die, all the more we want to appreciate it now, right? And it's the same with everything that we love, ourselves and our family and everything that we value. Because it's impermanent, we want to be here with it now so that we can love it now. That's really the core of mindfulness. Like, it's not just, oh, I paid attention, I did it, good, great job, I'm in the present, but who cares, we care because what we love is in the present. We want to be there and we want to be effective. So that's why I like bring Ecclesiastes in here, because I think it brings a different flavor than Buddhism, which seems a little more, there's a guy, he looks like he's a skeleton meditating, This one has skeletons in it too. I guess it's a morbid topic, but that's really the truth. Life is bittersweet. Life is bittersweet, and when we're with that bittersweetness, that's when we appreciate people the most. When we know that they're impermanent, we don't take people for granted. We really say, this is the time. Now is the time to do it. It's the only time we have. Okay. And remember, we're going to have more questions at the end. So please do ask questions. Any type of questions. I love whatever you got. Okay, so this is, I'm not going to say much about this slide, but I do like the idea of John Kabat-Zinn and the idea that mindfulness was designed, his empirical mindfulness-based stress reduction was designed to address the problem of chronic pain. And so by paying attention, so talking about like how can mindfulness help me accept more, by paying attention to the pain, by being present with it, people actually suffered less. Why? Because, if you have pain in the left side of your body, then maybe you compensate with some tension in your right side of your body. And then you have more pain because of that, right? But with mindfulness, we just see it, we observe it, and we don't have that extra physical, could be a physical resistance of the pain, but also that mental resistance that creates that emotional suffering, right? Where we're controlled by the pain, we're always trying to, how can I relieve it, and so forth. Mindfulness, by being with it, we have the best outcome. And that's just a principle of mental health that's good to keep in mind, is that the more we avoid, the more we suffer, the more we turn towards often. The more we turn towards our pain, the more freedom we have from our pain. And mindfulness is one way that we can do that. Okay. Practical application. Yeah, my cat again, she sits and meditates. This is my meditation cushion. She sits and meditates too. Cats do it, right? They do it all the time. They're really good at it. Okay, so how does spirit translate into practice? So the practice it's about paying attention on purpose to the present moment. And you can kind of get stuck in that, like, oh, am I paying attention? But we don't want to forget that spirit of it. Why do we want to pay attention? It's because everything that we love is here in this present moment. Whatever we want to do well, it's here in this present moment. So sitting meditation. So what that can do for us is, so that'd be something like we did the meditation exercise and we would do it for 10 minutes a day. And that would, it's kind of like training, like I'm a piano player, it's like doing your scales. And then during the day, the paying attention to the present task is like, this is the real life application. Here I am, my tire is flat on the highway, and this is time for mindfulness and acceptance, right? How so? Okay, I'm getting the directions out from the glove box. I'm going to the trunk. I'm taking out the tire. I'm taking, I don't even know if people change their tires much anymore, but I would. You're taking out the tire iron and so forth. So, right, the only way you're going to be effective in that situation is to be there. The longer that you resist it, the longer it's going to take to get back on the road. But by sitting in meditation, like say in the morning, we're going to have more concentrated power to be there in the moment and not let those ruminative thoughts, because it sucks, right? I mean, we're all going to think this is a situation that sucks, but to be able to train our attention to focus in on what matters in that moment, which is safely changing the tire. And then mindful pausing. So we've done that. And let's do that again. Let's take 3 breaths right now. And there we go. Very easy, but very effective. We can do that throughout the day, right? You can do it on the hour, every hour. You could do it just whenever you feel like you're getting a little heated or whatever, just to reset. So you get stuck in that ruminative cycle. You're thinking and thinking and thinking, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to be over here in this little mindful space for a little while. And then my brain kind of resets in the center where I can be more effective. So those are 3 exercises. You can, if you want to do sitting meditation, try just a minute a day, and then try to work up to maybe 10. 10 would be a good number, but anything that you can commit to consistently is better, is the best number. Paying attention to the present task. This is where you can bring your values into the present. So if your value is family, then you can bring that word to your mind, family, when you're at work and you're frustrated and you want to kill your boss. Well, the reason you're working is for your family. And when you bring that to the present, then that reminds you to live by your values of I want to support my family, right? And you can use that word to become aware of your body and how you're feeling in that moment, how you're behaving. Okay, so those are 3 ways to practice. Now we got our meditation practice in, so that's good. These are some resources, and I think this is going to be posted. I'm sorry, I don't quite have the information, but I think it's going to be posted later. So you can access some of these, but Palos Mindfulness is a mindfulness-based stress reduction thing. Greater Good Science Center has a lot of resources, compassion meditations. These apps will guide you through meditations, so those can be very useful if you like those. And then these are some good books. Okay, I'm going to go over our questions because we're running out of time, but hopefully these are the things that you've learned. Yes, so the slides are going to be posted at moodtreatmentcenter.com/webinar in the next 48 hours. Okay, so we've got, this is our other question. What are health outcomes of breathing or meditation? Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to have to reflect on this for a moment, get back to the research in the back of my brain. So what are the health outcomes? As I'm reflecting on the research in the back of my brain, I don't have a number like, well, people who meditate every day experience this group experiences so many fewer heart attacks. But what I do know is that, for instance, mindfulness-based stress reduction is effective in reducing stress. And what is stress related to? Heart disease, right? Things like, I'm trying to think of like things that mindfulness can help with. For instance, diabetes, maybe, where you need a lot of impulse control, right, to manage your diabetes. I'm a diabetic, and I found that mindfulness was very helpful for me in managing the diabetes, in having that ability to pause, like to really because you really got to pause a lot when you're managing diabetes. So I think it can help people in how they relate to their health practices. And I think that's really the main way that it helps with your health is through that that mechanism of stress reduction, because when you reduce your stress, there's fewer stress hormones in your body, and the more those are active, the more you're in fight and flight, the more likely you are to experience numerous diseases. So that's the answer I have for that question. I would say reduces stress, you can have better outcomes in general, plus your ability to manage your health through impulse control. Okay, so we got a few more minutes. Let me just check. Got some questions. Okay, I have a hard time meditating. Okay, great question. Because I'm sure a lot of people experienced that when we did the mindful breathing exercise. So, yes, you and everyone else, it's difficult. So, we got to think about like, what's the goal when we meditate? The goal is to sit for the allotted amount of time, right? That's it. So if we're going to do 3 breaths, the goal is to be there for 3 breaths. If we're going to do 5 minutes, the goal is to be there for 5 minutes. So that's how we can measure our success, for one. So success is not that I'm focused on the breath 100% of the time throughout the meditation. Success is we continue to try. So whenever you notice that you're not paying attention, that's great. That's mindfulness. You're remembering to do it. So don't be like, oh, damn it, I forgot. Instead, reframe that and be, oh, great, I remembered again. And you're going to keep remembering. The more you remember, the more you're going to be focused, the easier it's going to feel to you. I think that if you have a hard time focusing, counting the breaths is very useful. Having that mental feedback is very, very useful. Another thing is you might try walking meditation, what I was talking about, like with the kids in the woods, that kind of really slow walking, like you're very aware of how you're moving. You might be a more active person. Sitting just might not be the thing for you. So walking meditation might be useful. Guided meditation might be useful. Something called a body scan, where you don't focus on the breath, you focus on how you feel throughout your body. Some people find that easier to do. And you can access that on the UCLA mindfulness app, which is posted with these slides. So those are some things of how you can focus better, but yeah, the thing is, don't be hard on yourself. Do it for the time that you said to do it. And yeah, and don't be hard on yourself. So that is what I have for today. Thank you all for participating. I hope this has been useful, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all so much.